Political promises are much like marriage vows. They are made at the beginning of the relationship between candidate and voter, but are quickly forgotten. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is election promises and pledges. Joining us this evening on the show are Anuradha Wimalaratne from the SJB, Kris Balthazaar from the SLPP, Dhananath Fernando, CEO of the Advocata Institute, as well as Bram, an economist. To pose questions from our panelists this evening, on to my immediate right is Newsfirst, Consultant Director at Newsfirst. And on to my immediate left is Nadim Majid. You too can join in as far as the conversation is concerned. The number to send in your messages is 076 656 5353. The number once again, 076 656 5353. Let's get the ball rolling today with Anuradha Wimalaratne representing the SJB. Anuradha, before we talk about election promises and pledges, we have to revisit and see what really happened with the SJB at the last election. Now, there are lessons learned usually following an election. What lessons has the SJB learned following the last presidential and general election?
Shamil, first of all, thank you for having me. Well, complex question. We are still trying to figure that out, but there's quite a few opinions about it. Some people are saying that we didn't reach the public properly, we didn't carry our message in properly, and then there is a view that about 30 years of political misconduct by the centre-right or centre-right parties actually came to culmination, and the public took that whole anger out on the SJB this time. So that is those are the few things that the people inside the party are pointing fingers at, and I personally think this is a combination of both, because for the past 30 years, like, even we are not happy with how our political representatives, people who came from the so-called major parties, behaved. So I think there was a anger, frustration built up by the people. So this was more or less, I think, a protest vote, and people wanted to see a different, or we wanted to see someone else have a go. So that is one thing, and I think as the SJB, we definitely dropped the ball. We have to admit that we did not carry our message through to the people in a way that the majority of this country understands. So I think on our part, we tried to be very direct. We gave them a plan. We told them how it's going to be executed. We gave a proper laid out plan, whereas I personally think majority of this country is not intelligent enough to understand it, and they just wanted quick solutions, as they always want. Like, we said, we will give something to you in 2 years, and this is how we are going to do it, whereas the NPP came out and said, as soon as we get elected, from day after tomorrow, like things like, we are going to reduce fuel prices, we are going to reduce cost of living, we are going to recover stolen assets, we are going to bring the crooks to task from the next day onwards. So, as our people always do, they went for the easier, shorter, more simple version for this country's problems. So, I think basically that's what happened.
Anuradha, in your opening remarks, you said that even you as an individual have got fed up of the 30 years that political representatives have been in power, and you too wanted a change. So don't you think the change that has been now brought in by the people of Sri Lanka is very well welcomed, and that is what the people really need right now, given the fact that your party has even failed to appoint 4 members to the national list even to date?
Well, Shamil, this is the thing. from a change, what I meant was, I want to see a change in the people that run this country. What actually happened in the last...
You have 162 members who are new parliamentarians now in this parliament.
159.
No,
yes.
159, that is the NPP members. But overall, in the 225 members who are elected by the people, 162 are new members this time around.
Yes, but the thing is this...
That new change is not sufficient.
Shamil, but you know, like, look at what has happened in this election. Now, people gave a I am not arguing that people chose and, you know, they gave an overwhelming mandate to the NPP. But has this really been a change? You know, for the past 30 years, people of this country have been voting for the party or the group that gives the shortest, easiest, most simple bunch of what's a nice word for this? Just say bunch of lies, right? Because I don't want to use the other word. But like, nothing has changed. You know, NPP did the same thing, and the overwhelming majority of this country accepted that. And you know, I think now they are slowly starting to realize. But look, what I wanted to say was, I wanted a change in the caliber of people that was sent to Parliament. Now, take the first day of Parliament, for example. The first thing that comes to my mind, you know, if I'm, you know, like talking in Sinhalese terms, Kolabasanniya, right? If not, it's the Hollywood hillbillies, right? You know, speaker comes with that headdress tucked, and then there was a joker who comes and, you know, sits at the opposition leader's seat and says, no, we are here to change the system, and this should be it. And there was one member was taking pictures of his wife in the gallery. Wife was waving from the gallery. 20 plates were broken. 9 forks went missing. 18 spoons went missing. The only thing that didn't happen was someone didn't go and write their name in the toilet stalls. Like, is this the kind of parliament you want, man? This bunch of jokers. And when all this is happening, what are they focusing on? Even the Prime Minister...
I just want to hypothetically ask you a question.
Prime Minister, wait, let me finish. The Prime Minister even you guys are focusing on opposition's 4 nationalist seats. No,
let's
they have 159.
Let's hypothetically say, Anuradha, you are elected to this parliament.
Yeah.
I'm sure you won't break plates, but I'm sure some representative from your family would have arrived in Parliament to see you dressed well and seated and as a debutant in the Parliament. And you probably would have waved at your wife who's in the gallery as well. So that is not a
no. This is the thing.
Hypothetically,
this is the thing, Shamil. Yes, most probably a family member of mine would have come.
So that is.
But the thing is, come on.
We are talking
I
about
am not going
national
to
politics. We are talking about 20 plates being broken and 14 forks being missing, and some member waving the hand to their wife in the gallery. What are you talking?
Shamil,
we should not make this conversation a problem.
What you have to understand, this is the parliament of this country. You can't behave in there like, you know, it's a kindergarten play, right? You know how kindergarten kids, you know, when they are performing, you know, they are, you know, waving to their parents. You can't behave like that in a parliament. Parliament, you're supposed to have some sort of respect, right? Because people in other countries are going to be watching, right? And there were representatives from the embassies. What are they going to think of us, men? They are going to think these are bunch of jokers, bunch of hillbillies are running this country. I think we, in that, you know, one day, we went about 20 years behind as a nation.
We, as I always say, Anuradha, we respect your opinions because you're a panelist this evening. But all what you're saying has to be taken with a bit of salt, because at the end of the day, let's say your members, if you all had 162 members being elected from your party, I can't even imagine what drama that would have created in Parliament, but we have to wait and see if that ever happens.
Behaved way better than
but
this.
We'll have to wait and see whether that ever happens in the Sri Lankan Parliament, having 159 members from the SJB. Anyway, let's leave it at that.
Next time.
We'll come to that in a minute. I now move my attention towards Kris Balthazaar from the Sri Lanka Podjana Peramuna. Kris, 6.9 million at one election comes down to 3%. A party that had only 3% goes up to 6.8 million votes. What does it say? A complete rejection of the Rajapaksas?
Well, firstly, Shamir, thank you for having me on the show tonight.
Nice to have you after a long time.
Yeah, not been here for some time, but see, Shamir, you have to understand that this whole parliamentary election and the presidential election was brought out with a campaign that said that they did not want all 225 parliament members are rogues and they should not be representing in parliament. So, you know, like we talk about this Goebbels theory, this went on and, you know, people continuously were told that there are rogues, Rajapakshas have stolen, then every single MP was accused of different atrocities over a period of time. So I think that led to anger amongst people, and that also, you know, with the problems that the country faced after the COVID, with the economic struggle, people were a bit fed up at one point. So they gave President Gotabaya Rajapaksa a period of 2 years to operate, and then, you know, sadly he had to vacate his seat. Then President Ranil Wickremesinghe comes in, balances the economy, goes forward, but by that time, the lies that were told, so lies when you go to think about the Ugandan money that was printed, that was sent, so, and then they later on come out and say that, you know, we never said this, but it was just on a context of a stage that we had to say it. And I think the new trend now, Shamir, is that even though you did say it, and then you can come out later on and say, no, I never said it, but it must be AI generated. You know, that's the sort of context that we have come to now, where people can say things, but then they say, you know, I never said it in that context, or it could have been different.
So what do you infer to?
No, like as to how people, what they said during the election, during the campaign and prior to that, and as to where they are now. You know, it's some of the things that the government has said prior to the election,
no,
they now are in denial.
Yeah,
so,
but Kris, let's forget about all this that the NPP went on a campaign attacking the Rajapaksas or whatever. Let's forget about that for a minute.
All that led
but
to,
don't you think the Rajapaksas itself have failed this country miserably?
You can't say that, Shamir. You know, the Rajapaksas themselves, that family, or, you know, starting from Mahinda Rajapaksa, before he became president, from the point of being Labour minister to bring the Labour Charter enacted, making Sri Lanka one of the strongest in labour laws, and being able to do that. So he was behind quite a lot in strengthening this country. As a president, what he did, I don't have to tell you. Today, you know, we are privileged to live in a free country, undivided country. But, you know, people on the latter...
But what? Tell me.
People on the latter fell for the lies. Now, in 2015, when we were defeated,
so let's take a look at, let's forget about the Mahinda Rajapaksa time between 2005 and 2015. There are a lot of allegations that have been leveled. Let's say individuals like in the caliber of people like Lasantha Wickrematunge was murdered in broad daylight. Individuals in the caliber of Joseph Paraj Singham was murdered on the 1st of January. So let's forget about all that. Let's say you all did something for the country between 2005 and 2015. Let's look at 2019, 2022. Tell me, the Rajapaksa, is Gotabaya Rajapaksa, I'm sure Gotabaya Rajapaksa is a brother of Mahinda Rajapaksa, right? So when I say Rajapaksas, all of these individuals are incorporated in the family. So I'm just trying to understand, are you trying to say that from 2019 until the country's economy fell, the Rajapaksas were not involved? They have to be given a free certificate to ride now?
Shamir, see, what you have to understand is, in 2015, after everything, you know, when the Yapalani came to power, within 3 years of coming into power, having there, now you said the allegations on certain media personnel being murdered and, you know, those things. there was committees put in, and some of those committees were chaired by the current president's private secretary, who's now also minister of the cabinet minister. But you know, when you go on to that, it's there was a period, and then in 2018, what happened with that government at the time was, you know, they were trying to get out of this. They were trying to make allegations that the Rajapakshas are racist. And that was one main thing that they focused on at that point. But
and they were not?
No, no.
Are you sure?
The united country. They had parliamentarians from all avenues.
You were were you in Aludgam in 2014?
What happened in Aludgam? Where was there
was no
Rajapaksa
racism?
involvement?
No, there was no racism in the country at that time.
So,
right after 2019, Easter Sunday bomb attacks. There was 19. There was no racism in the country.
So was that who was in power at that
time? In 2019, when Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected, in his opening remarks, him saying that it was not the vote of the Tamils or the Muslims that he was elected to power, it was Sinhalese vote. That's not racism.
It's not promoting racism.
No,
he mentioned it, but he never promoted racism. He never said that, you know, the Tamil community has to be kept separate. The Muslim community.
At the opening ceremony of one of the headquarters of one of the groups that was involved in the 2014 Alabama riots, that has subsequently been involved in multiple other incidents as well. That's not a display. I mean, his own justice minister has now said that the issue of forced cremations stemmed from racism. Ali Sabri has said that on the silver screen.
It's like it all boils down to the opening
Shamir,
but like a marriage. People tend to forget after some time.
No, so exactly where I was coming.
But the promises that were made prior to the
government's folk, even now, you know, 2 moons down, we can't come to conclusions. But even now, when you focus on racism, what happened, the outcome was acts of terrorism that took place. But prior to that, in 2018, don't forget, we were in power starting from 2018. We whitewashed the local government elections. Instead, 2019, where once his President Rajapaksa said that Gotabaya Rajapaksa, my brother, is going to come as the presidential candidate, that we had won it. We had already painted the Sri Lanka map with the Sri Lanka Positana Party name, and we've established ourselves.
Just imagine, Kris, what a pity. 2018, you all marked the map with the photo colors. 2023, 24, not even in the map.
No, but
not even in the map. At least, let's say, at least being in the map, let's say you all get 3% and 2 people are elected. Not even that.
No, we had
one person was elected. It's like the Ranil Wickremesinghe story.
Okay, as the national organizer.
Pity, no.
No, this is politics, Shamir. You have to accept it. As you said, 3% becoming, you know, 52%, and you know, 6.9 million coming down 3%. We have to.
What would have happened if Namal Rajapaksa contested from Hambantota? What would have happened if
that was his choice? But then we as the party told, because he as the national organizer where he has to travel the country, for him to hold back. And
you all said that, Kris? You also said that?
Majority of the party representatives who were there at that time, that was...
Good, if not, he wouldn't have even been elected.
We won 1 seat in Hambantota.
Yeah,
it would have
been
2 if Namal had contested as well.
Right, thanks a lot, Kris. Thank you very much, representing the SLPP. I now move my attention towards Dhananath Fernando from the Advocata Institute, who is the CEO as well. Dhananath, just a couple of months ago, when you came on the show, we were talking about the country's economy, how the state of affairs are going to be like by the end of the year. Are you satisfied the way in which Sri Lanka has progressed after a presidential and a general election? Now we are in December. A few days from now, it's going to be 31st of December, and we are going to talk about 2025 starting a few days from now. Are you satisfied the way in which how Sri Lanka has marched forward after a presidential and general election?
The first few decisions by the government when it comes to the economy, I think those were in the right direction. First, on continuation with the IMF program, not that I have a special preference for the IMF, but we do not really have another option rather than sticking with the IMF program. If we were to derail from that program, consequences could have been severe. So that is the right direction. Second thing is on confirming the debt restructuring. Of course, I think the negotiation could have been better. We could have done well, but by delaying it, things could have been again. Things would be more harmful than by delaying it rather than agreeing to it. So I think that is also in the right direction. Continuation of some of the senior positions in the Ministry of Finance and at the central bank, I think that's also in the right direction. What could have been done better? I suggest the budget could have been proposed quite earlier. I think from September to January, February is about 3 to 4 months. I understand the general elections were held in October, but knowing that when the president was elected from a party, since he was the finance minister, because if the budget was proposed earlier, actually it could have been helpful for this government to implement their mandate.
Dhananath, there is a vote on account that's going to come into play in a few days from now.
Correct. I recommend no vote on account is fine. There's no legal repercussions, but if you have a budget proposed, that means your map is clear. Because now when you're getting to the budget in February, March, and then you hit the New Year holidays, and then you have about another 8 to 9 months to continue, because since this is like sort of new mandate by the people, I think if there's a budget, because vote on account is only mainly on the expenditure items, only on the budget you can really see what are your revenue measures, and that could have also been helpful for the businesses now, because the businesses have to wait till February to see it. But overall, I think those two decisions are in the right direction, but that's a tricky point, because I think this government came with a mandate on one side on anti-corruption. I think that was what was pretty much projected. There has to be multiple reforms needs to be done. I'm not sure about how to bringing that money and all that, which I think if there's incidents that has to be done for sure, but there are massive regulatory reforms that is needed if we were to do that, because if you look at the previous cases, they all go to the Supreme Court and then the cases being postponed or being appealed, and this goes beyond like 5-year terms. So that is the challenge on one side, and the second challenge is the growth. Economy has to be, we have to grow the economy. To do that, you have structural issues. It's like, you have a restricted land, and if you really want to grow, you have to change the foundation and do multiple innovative stuff. So for that, you have to grow the economy, which requires structural reform.
So, Dhananath, I know very well that you are not a fan of imposing maximum retail prices on essential commodities. We've discussed this over and over again. The downfall of Sri Lanka in 2022 was this, having MRPs, and as a result of that, people started hoarding goods as well. But now we see, right after the government said that they are going to import rice, we just hear the Vasant Samarasinghe, the Minister of Trade, saying that 200,000 metric tons of rice will be distributed to Satus outlets through the government schemes at a maximum retail price. Is the government going to shoot their foot by this decision?
Price controls will never work, Shamir. This is not the right decision when it comes to imposing price control. If you recall, the same playbook was tried unfortunately by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa as well. After COVID, if you recall, the canned fish, the dal, I think there was a maximum price of 100 rupees, if I may recall. But it won't work, because when you have a price control, because if your cost of production is higher than your control price, there is no way that you can sell it. Like if you produce this X good at 100 rupees, and if the control price is at 80, there is no way that I can sell it at 80 rupees, because why should I make a loss of 20 rupees by selling it? So of course people are going to hoard it, and not only that, you are creating a black market, because the people who need it will come and ask from me for 100 rupees. I will say, no, I can't give it for 100 rupees because this, government is behind me. I'll sell it only to 150 rupees. So you are creating a complete artificial market, and you are doing a Yes.
So right at the start, this decision by the government, isn't it a suicidal decision, given the fact that we've had experiences of this sort in previously as well?
Absolutely. This is definitely not the right direction in terms of the price controls. But I think the rice market itself is also, Shamir, unfortunately quite complicated. You really cannot have like an overnight solution to solve it. I think their decision on importing.
But this is a monopoly.
This is more on an oligopoly on one side. At the same time, there's still a gazette notification with a control price of 220 rupees, which I think issued a few years ago. I think that you have to reverse that gazette, remove that gazette, and remove that price control. On the other side, the weather has been good, but I think with recent incidents, that is also a challenge.
So this fighting this oligopoly very quickly, Dhananath, I just want to understand this before we move to Bram. To withstand this oligopoly and fight this oligopoly, is importing rice the best option?
Not really, Shamir. I mean, importing rice is one option, but the rice market, the challenge is, if I were to very quickly explain, this is quite complicated. The challenge is the rice that we produce is short grain rice, which you do not have an export market. So as a result, even if you everyone gets a better harvest, there's a big inflow to the market, so your prices going to go down. And imagine there's a drought or a flood or something and your total harvest is low, then your prices go up. But the farmer gets the same amount, because though the prices are going up, your total volume is the same. So farmer really doesn't have an incentive to increase your harvest. So just by producing more and more rice really will not help. And on the other side, the farmers, the only seller that they have is the rice millers.
Right.
But what you need to do is you have to diversify the buyer group. I think unfortunately there's another gazette, I think, that the rice farmers can only sell rice to the millers, which is another problem, because rice being used for beer production, sometimes on producing some of the antioxidants and perfumes, milk. There are a variety of products being produced by rice. But unfortunately, that is prohibited. But of course, we also do not have the industries. So it's very complicated. But I think overall, because anyway we import rice for tourism industry, this jasmine rice, basmati, we all import. But importing is one thing, it is in the right direction, but I think we have to look at on a more broader scale, because the stakeholders there are many stakeholders involved, right, and the problem is quite complicated.
Right, thank you very much, Dhananath Fernando, CEO of Advocata Institute. I now move my attention towards Bram Nicholas, economist. Bram, just 2 days prior to the presidential elections, we saw the sovereign bond holders agreeing to a certain kind of conditions that was imposed by the government in terms of the DSA and the debt restructuring that was going on. Have you been able to see this document in question? Because we, as media organizations, we've not seen this agreement that was reached between the sovereign bond holders as well as the government yet.
I haven't seen the document itself. What I've seen is articles written about the agreement. Here and there, some speculation, but also some figures that have been verified.
So, what is the deal now? Is the sovereign bond holders going to get a haircut? Are they looking, because based on the growth rate of Sri Lanka, this would be restructured again in 2028 if the growth rate is good? What is the deal here, just for our viewers to understand? What is going on? Are you aware of it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, what I've really focused on is not so much the technical details.
Right.
Because basically, to my understanding, like you said, up to 2028, there are certain debt repayments that are set in stone, but also depending on what the growth rate is of Sri Lanka.
Right. Let's take a look at the stock market right now, the way in which it's performing at the moment. What's this sudden boom that we are experiencing now? Because we saw a lot of activity a few months prior to the presidential election. Many high net worth individuals were very active in the Colombo stock market, buying banking shares very aggressively. And if you look at those numbers now, they're making over 30 to 35% margins on those shares that were bought at that time. what is the sudden surge that's happening with the Colombo stock market?
I mean, I myself look at global markets a lot, and then I place Sri Lanka in that context. And what I have always seen is that to a very large extent, Sri Lanka always moves with the global markets. So for me, this really correlates with what we've seen in especially the US, where the stock market has been booming, because there seems to be a bit of renewed optimism towards the global economy. Some people had thought that it was going to lead to a recession very early in the next year. But I think now people are expecting it either to not happen at all or come a bit later. And so this optimism, I think, is also spreading to emerging markets like Sri Lanka that are now a bit more positive about the outlook on the global economy.
But don't you think what we are experiencing right now in the Colombo stock market is the optimism that has come to the table following the appointment of a new president who has vowed that they would fight corruption and put the country's economy on the right track, and a parliament which has a 2/3 or a resounding majority in parliament, and even the IMF very principally agreeing to give Sri Lanka the tranche as well. So all this optimism, hasn't that reflected the country's stock market as a whole?
Definitely possible, but I'll tell you from my perspective, it might be a bit misplaced. It's, I think, very early days to, now say whether or not the MPP has done the correct things, because, they've still only been in power for 3 months and the general elections have just been. But the problems that I see for the Sri Lankan economy are really what the MPP is inheriting. And that is, for me, an economy that is moving more and more into a rentier economy. And I'll explain to you what that is. It's basically an economy that no longer focuses on production, but is now shifting more and more into things like tourism, finance, and export-oriented agriculture, which to me is actually a recipe for disaster. We've seen it before in Sri Lanka, where this focus was there, and it has led to more than one crisis. I don't see anything yet of the government in terms of a change, of course, on that account. But like I said, it's early days. But if you allow me, there are just 3 things I want to mention that have developed along with this rentier economy that we see forming now. The first is, and I don't know how, but this has somehow gone unnoticed, I think, by a lot of people, perhaps not Dhananath, because he has been commenting on it as well, or at least involved in the debates. But there is a very serious rise in interest rates going on at the moment. And we're seeing the real money market interest rate at the highest we've seen it for at least 20 years. What this means is that companies, any normal company that is doing cash flow management through borrowing from the banks for working capital, is now got a tremendous cost attached to it. And so I'm not surprised that the opposition today raised concerns about extending the, the suspension of the Parata law, because I think they are getting the data in now that a lot of SMEs are in serious trouble at the moment, partly because of these insanely high interest rates.
Interest rates. What are the other 2 aspects that you want to touch on?
So the other 2 are, we are still dealing with a massively overvalued rupee. And we said this already a year back, where if we look at Sri Lanka's competitor countries, Sri Lankan goods are 50%, at least 50% more expensive, or at least their costs of production. And that doesn't mean that the government can solve this by just simply depreciating the rupee, but it's actually a reflection of simply costs being too high in Sri Lanka.
So just for clarity's sake, so you're saying that the rupee against the US dollar should be more?
So there are
now
many
it's
things
going at
that
288.
So like I said, the solution is not necessarily a depreciation of the currency. That's often a mistaken step. Actually, what it's showing is that when you account for the exchange rate, Sri Lanka's costs of production are much too high.
Okay, what's the other point?
And sorry, just to finish that, we see this, for example, in electricity costs. Everyone knows this. Sri Lanka's electricity costs are way higher than the average in not just South Asia, but all over.
What's the third point?
Third and last point is what we were actually discussing before. With all this discussion of the debt deal now being done, again, what has been sidelined is how Sri Lanka is going to make payments on external debt. This is external debt we're talking about. What was the crisis we had? It was a dollar crisis. And nobody is looking at how Sri Lanka is going to earn the dollars needed to repay this debt.
Okay.
There are all these calculations being made of, you know, how many billions will Sri Lanka have to pay and, you know, what interest rate is it going to be according to these macro-linked bonds.
Right.
But the real question is, how is Sri Lanka going to earn the foreign exchange? And so far, I'm seeing the same old recipe, which has never been sustainable.
Right.
Tourism and export-oriented agriculture and a reliance on remittances.
Right. Thanks a lot, Bram. Yes.
One quick question.
Yeah, I'll come to you. Don't worry.
No. Just I want to clarify something.
Don't worry. I'll come to you. Don't worry. I promise you.
I'm not okay.
I promise you, Anuradha, don't worry. Patience is the last that you make the better judge, right? Right. So I want to open the floor for questions from our journalists. On my immediate right is Newsfirst Thambi, consultant director at Newsfirst, as well as Nadeem Majid. With the two of your permission, can I give Anuradha the opportunity to pose the question, or is Anuradha will have it in mind?
Go ahead.
No, Anuradha, please, you can pose the question.
I just wanted to know, because you know, like, I haven't looked into it, but you know, I want to get your opinion on it, Bram. Now, this rise in the stock market, could it be a few high net worth individuals using the euphoria of the people with the new government to run a pump and dump on the stock market?
It's really not my area of expertise,
Could it be?
Unfortunately.
Dhananath,
It's
can you
always a
respond to that?
Yeah, no, my view is it's one reason is the stability that the government indicated, definitely with the IMF program continuation and of course with the majority, but also the interest rates compared to where it was, it is now slowly coming down. So when your interest rates are coming down, of course when the certain bonds and the bills mature, people have choice to consider whether I'm going to reinvest on the same treasury bills or whether am I looking for different options for better earnings. So
in the last 11 weeks until pretty much the end of November, there was a uptick in foreign inflows in bonds and bills as well, right, in government securities. What's the cause for this? Is this how do you explain that?
So basically, the government has to roll over debt. So they have to borrow to repay the previous debt that the previous governments had borrowed over a period of time. That's what we have been doing. So as a result, the demand has been, because you need to roll over on one side and you have to cover the interest rate. I think that's the main reason.
And Dhananath, we can notice that a lot of people, high net worth individuals, are operating in the Colombo stock market at this moment of time. Is it because the earnings from the stock market is tax-free?
That could be also another potential reason. But from what I see, it is I'm not wiping out I'm not ruling out like whether there's pumping and dumping. That I think has been happening at the stock market for some time in different scales. But I think in this case, because when the interest rates are slowly coming down, people want to
Bram, I'm trying to figure out what Dhananath said with what you were saying before. You were saying that the interest rates are high at the moment. However, if you look at 2022, the interest rate was going at 28%, and now the interest rates are going at around 14%, and the policy interest rates have not changed after the central bank issued the recent statement as well. And then you mentioned about the depreciation of the rupee, but if you look at what happened in 2022 when Ajit Niwal Cabral was the governor of the central bank, the price went to 370 and against the dollar, and the black market rates went up to around 400. And then you spoke about the dollar crisis as well. But I just want to touch on these first two aspects that you mentioned before. The real reason is not this, it's just that mismanagement of the country's economy, isn't it?
So on the interest rates, what I'm talking about is real interest rates, where we discount inflation. And as we've probably all seen, we're now dealing with a deflationary environment where prices are actually falling, yet interest rates haven't been matching that fall. Usually they do, but they haven't. And if you want to know why this is going on, it'll be a bit of a sidetrack into one of my biggest issues in the economy at the moment. But there's a very serious problem here where the central bank is actually not able to bring down these interest rates along with inflation. And that is the problem we're dealing with. Real money market rates have never been this high. You see, if interest rates have indeed come down since 2022, but if they match the fall in inflation, we wouldn't have a problem.
But Bram, in 2022, I think Dhananath also can add, there were a lot of issues with the country's economy. If you look at it, dollar FDs were fetching more than the rupee FDs. If you looked at it in 2022, when the country's economy collapsed, dollar FDs were going at around 9%, whereas the rupee interest rates were hovering somewhere very low as well. So don't you think it is completely because of mismanagement that we are in this situation today and nothing else?
So that is indeed why I said that what the NPP is inheriting is a serious problem.
So this problem is directed at the Gotabaya Rajapaksa administration, isn't it?
It goes even further back than that, because if we look at the core issues that Sri Lanka has been faced with for over 40 years, it's a trade deficit that has never gone away, because Sri Lanka never bit the bullet and went for full.
In 2018, there was a positive trade deficit, right?
No, that's the budget.
Budget, yes.
Yeah, there was a surplus on the primary budget for a short while. But what I'm talking about is trade, so exports minus imports. Has always been a deficit for Sri Lanka, and that has not been solved.
Yeah. So, Dhananath, I just want to understand where you're coming from, because you all have been very vociferous with regard to, as an institute, with regard to why the country fell bankrupt. And even in 2021 December, when I spoke to Murtaza, your executive director, he went on to say that the $500 million that was supposed to be paid to bondholders shouldn't be paid immediately. And even a soft default is the way to move forward. And a few months after that, Sri Lanka declared itself bankrupt. And that was a very soft default that we encountered a few months after. What really happened and what are we experiencing now? Is Anuradha Dissanayake having too much on his plate right now in terms of the country's economy?
So, very simply, we had mismanagement and also misfortunate, but I will leave the misfortunate out. It's basically the Easter attack, and there was a drought in 2016, 17. So there were some misfortunate incidents as well, but it's mainly the mismanagement that took place. We borrowed too much money in dollar terms at very high interest rates and invested in non-revenue generating resources. So that was the problem number one. With that, of course, our interest rates were very high and we didn't generate a cent to repay some of those investments that we have done. That's the number one problem, in my view, during that period. At the same time, Shamir, this is what I'm trying to explain most of the time. The demand for dollars is coming from the rupee supply. Because as you as an importer or me as an importer, we go to the bank and we are not asking dollars free of charge. We are going and giving some rupees, which we have hardly earned. And also when I am giving the bank some rupees means I'm cutting some of my expenditure, because either I could have used it for buy something, but instead of that, now I'm giving that rupees to buy dollars. So by rupees supply is what determines the dollar demand. Now, one example is, if you recall, during COVID time, and the banks basically directed. For an example, during that time, banks did not extend any credit for tourism industry, because they knew with COVID, tourism having a difficult time. So they were not willing to extend credit, because then their non-performing loan ratios are going up. And at the same time, even without, let's say, vehicle imports, let's say, as we all know, even if you go to the bank, the interest rate that they offer to buy a vehicle is very high compared to your housing loan. So basically, the banks create a credit flow more towards the houses than vehicles. And if the banks increase the interest rates mainly on vehicles, basically people will...
But Dhananath, now, right now, you spoke about vehicle imports. Now, I recollect Ranil Wickremesinghe, during Ranil Wickremesinghe's administration, Nandalal Veerasinghe, the governor of the central bank, and the treasury secretary came and said that they have made all provisions to open up imports in terms of vehicle imports to the country in February onwards. Do you see that happening with the Anuradha Wimalaratne administration?
I do not want to predict, but I think it is likely. It seems for two reasons. One is the government also needs to generate revenue, but I do not recommend at all to create revenue by imposing tariff at the border, which is not recommended. That is where we got into trouble over the period of time. But it is likely, because otherwise the government really do not have a main revenue to collect taxes unless that they broaden the tax net. So it is likely, but I also think there's again a misconception that we are importing from reserves. That doesn't happen, because if that's the case, as we all know, our reserves are improving and our imports are also increasing. So how come if we are importing from reserves, the reserves and imports both are going to increase? We are importing from the proceedings we get from exports, from remittances, from tourism and other service exports. And that money will come on a particular day to the market. We have a very small exchange market. You are an exporter, you bring your dollars. I am an importer, I demand dollars. So based on your demand and supply, the currency, the price for the dollar will be determined.
So let's look at this a little bit more simply, Dhananath, because let's not complicate it. Let's make it very simple, William, so people also understand. So today I went to a particular showroom to see the vehicles that are supposed to be imported to the country following 2025 February.
You're going to buy a new vehicle?
No, I was prompted because the show was there today. I just want to go and understand as to what is happening right now, because it's always good as journalists, Dhananath, to get it first hand, right? So I went and I asked this showroom personnel, which is a multinational, multi-billion dollar company in Sri Lanka, which is operating that particular showroom in question. I asked them, how many have booked a vehicle so far? Right, so then they went on to say 3,000 vehicles already booked.
3,000.
3,000. Now.
By the way, were you looking at what end? I'm not going to talk about brands.
Around $80,000.
$80,000.
3,000 vehicles already booked. Now, what I'm trying to understand is, let's put this into numbers. This is $240 million, right? This has to be generated somehow at the end of the day, isn't it, Dhananath? So, can this be done? Now, vehicle imports have not been opened in February. We don't have a clear direction. But there is a showroom in Colombo which is accepting 500,000 upwards advance payment deposits for vehicles. I was shocked, because I have never seen that happening, because people also go and keep their money in the hope that the government taking a gamble.
Yeah, true. Let me try to simplify it. So let's say there's, $250 million dollars, right? So that means people have to go and deposit about 7.5 billion rupees.
Yes, approximately.
Approximately, right? So that means people have to cut down their expenditure by somewhere by 7.5 billion rupees. Which, if they, let's say this vehicle thing is not there, so probably they will be spending it somewhere else, right? That could also be imports, because that means either they are spending it on their house, maybe a computer, something. So unless the central bank prints money and infusing the cash flow.
But that can't happen now.
That can't happen now on first instance. That is, the central bank cannot buy the treasury bills or bonds from the primary market. They can buy it from the secondary market, or they can do the daily operations.
But they can still print.
They can still print on the as I mentioned, like they cannot buy it from the primary market, but there are other options. So that means if the system, if you consider it as like a closed system, you have to cut down from some imports to allow this vehicle.
Would that contract the country's economy?
If you allow everything, because there will be anyway shock effect, no, Shamit. If you allow
vehicles.
Exactly. So if you allow everything in one
that's
go,
only one company we're talking about.
We should stack, because when this is, it's going to have pressure on the rupee, right?
Yeah.
That's a misnomer. That's a known fact. Do you think that the government should stagger the way in which, because people have been asking for it, and for growth as well, you need mobility. So you think we should start with maybe industrial vehicles that have
because
industrial
if
use?
3,000 vehicles one company is importing, how many companies are there? This mushroom company.
Absolutely, it has to be phased out. That's what I said. You cannot give like a shock impact effect like every, from tomorrow onwards that you have.
Are you worried that there's no clarity from the government regarding how they're going to do this? Because when you look at how the vehicle importers are behaving, it looks like they are expecting this to be lifted come February 2025.
Correct.
So Nadeem, what you're saying,
indication on whether they are going to stagger this, how it's going to happen, and in the absence of that, it's very difficult for people to plan their lives as well, right? Isn't that cause for concern?
Ideally, Nadeem, but if you go back, every budget, the one of the key things that everyone was looking for, what's going to happen for the vehicle taxes. So I think this time also, unfortunately, it seems to be the case. But clarity, if the government can provide clarity, that is better. But most likely, for obvious reasons,
what would you advise the government to do in terms of staggering?
Yes, I would advise on two things. One is definitely you stagger it over a period of 2 years. You start from the industrial vehicles, agricultural vehicles, electric vehicles, and already I think the public transport vehicles, tourist vehicles are allowed. So you phase it out. Number one. Number two, I do not recommend to have 300% taxes on vehicles, because I will tell the reason. Because by 300% taxes means when someone buys a vehicle, let's say Shamir buys a vehicle, actually Shamir buys 3 vehicles, which he never uses. That the money that Shamir spends for 3 vehicles is the money that Shamir could have spent on something else, which is better. And if Shamir spends that money of those 3 vehicles, Shamir's expenditure is someone else's income. Let's say Shamir goes and take a professional course from somewhere else, that Shamir's expenditure is someone else's income. So by trying to get that taxes of 300%, you're cutting down someone else's revenue basically. So I do not recommend.
What you all have done, Kris?
He's implying don't buy a car.
No,
he's telling you not to buy the car.
Because of all imports all stopped.
That's number 2. Number 3 is improve the public transport.
So this is the important thing, right? Public transportation. There is no no government. Every successive government has
breathing in your life today
on public transport, which is why we have increasing vehicle numbers. We have this huge issue. The road network is not where it should be. The rail network is not where it should be. The transport hubs are not where they should be. The buses haven't changed from the 1970s or 80s, right? It's essentially a lorry chassis on which you've strapped on some seats. Extremely unsafe, no low-floor buses. These are issues, even on simple things like public transport. What is the direction? There is an absence of clarity. Like, I mean, to Anuradha's, to the SJB's credit, their blueprint had like timelines. We will do this from this. From here, you can expect this project will be done by this time. With the NPP government, I feel that they're like operating on vibes. Trust us, we'll get it done. Can you run a country like that?
Yes. I mean, where's the time plan?
Correct. So first, I'll come to that, but first phase it out for about 2 years, bring down the taxes. Third one, invest on public transport, but before that, third one, actually cancel all the vehicle permits, or at least bring that value down, because by having 300% taxes and having a vehicle permit system is like an advertisement by the government for scams. corruption. And if you look at a lot of ministers get into trouble by running vehicle scams, because of course when you have 300% and a vehicle permit, definitely you are allowing them to scam. Fourth, definitely improve public transport. And again, Nadeem, the issue with the public transport is the permit system. The permit holders do not want to have any other permit holders. So basically you are restricting the supply on one side. And on the other side, you have a price control on the ticket. For an example, I am sure everyone who have traveled to Jaffna, there's an excellent bus service. The prices are higher. But the service provided by, I'm not going to mention the services and all that, which is coming from Balthazaar, which is excellent. But that is above the government regulated price. But it provides service which is convenient, which is affordable for people, because otherwise when the person try to take his own vehicle and go to Jaffna.
So what if you do this then? Now, right now we know, like for example, bus permits are issued to individuals. It's not to a collective or to a company.
And
what if you instead
itself is rife with corruption?
Without this issuing of you change that system, corporatize the bus industry, and then you follow the model of Singapore, where you have to buy a permit that costs, I think, upwards of $80,000 now in order to buy a car.
Correct.
Should we be doing that?
That is one way to look at it. But I would put the first option, the priority. That is corporatizing the bus system, or like the public transport. The problem is now we are getting like individual get the bus route permit based on the political connection. Right. But if you have a route system and then auction it out.
We had corporatized bus services back in the 40s and 50s, and then it was all nationalized. So we are basically going.
And then when the economy but the thing is, when the economy was opened up by Mr. Jayawardena's administration, is when they introduced this system of issuing the permits to individuals. When they should have gone back to the corporatized.
Absolutely. So that route, the thing is, Nadeem, any route permit is a permit for corruption. Liquor licenses, bus permits, even this vehicle permits, every permit you have to have a connection. Let's be all honest, and that's why even in the parliament today discussed how the liquor permits being distributed before the election. So every permit.
I think there was talk of publishing the list of people.
Absolutely.
Maybe they should also publish the list of people who obtain transportation permits.
Absolutely, you can see.
Nadeem, this talk of publishing the list has been there for a while.
Yeah. It's in the IMF governance diagram.
No, I'm saying,
we're waiting to see the published list.
What I'm saying is this permit system, not just in India, in pretty much everywhere else, it creates cronyism, right? So why are we unfairly targeting the legal permit holders, but to the route permit holders as well?
Now we are only talking about 225 permits issued to the parliament. Nilesh, you would be surprised how many permits are issued by the government, even for public servants. That is going up to 9,000 plus. Anyway, I want to get back to Anuradha Wimalaratne. How long have you been with the UNP and then the SJB?
UNP since 2010 until the start of SJB, which was 2019.
Years.
14 years.
From 2010?
Yeah, but with the two parties for about
14 years. Yeah.
About 14 years.
Yeah.
Anuradha, so you've been way long in the UNP than Hirunika Premachandra. Where Hirunika joined the UNP much later.
Yeah.
Don't you think you also deserve a nationalist seat?
Yeah, I think, I think there are a lot of people that deserve a nationalist seat in our party. There are a lot of people that should have been
like
in parliament
like who?
That, are not, I think people will realize the mistake of that, I think, without taking too long. But there's quite a few people, I think, that...
No, you haven't answered my question. I'm asking you. Hirunika Premachandra is saying that she deserves to be in the national list of the SJB. You have been with the party even before Hirunika Premachandra.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you is very simple. Don't overcomplicate it.
Okay.
Right. Don't you think you deserve to be in the national list of the SJB?
I think I do. But my thing is.
Have you told this to Sajid Premadas?
No, because
you're waiting for him to understand.
To be honest, at the end of the day,
so he's probably watching the show.
My preferential count was really low, right? So, and I think that just shows people didn't want someone like me there, and whereas Hirunika got more votes. So, I think this is a time for me to just sit back a little bit and let this government proceed, because people.
So in your opinion, now you have already decided that you don't want to go to Parliament. Am I right?
No, I want to go to Parliament, but I want to be elected and go into Parliament.
Yeah, but you don't want to go to Parliament as far as the 10th Parliament is concerned.
This is the thing.
No, I'm asking yes or no. It's a very
no. I would definitely like to go in through the nationalist.
Okay.
But there is a huge conflict, not inside who we are going to appoint, because
So now there is Hirunika Premachandra.
No, see,
there is Tushar Indunil. There is Mano Ganeshan. There is Iran Vikramaratne. There is Dallas Salah Perama. GL Piris, Tisattanayake, Imtiaz Bakir Maka, Anuradha Wimalaratne.
Yeah.
All 9 of you all you are fighting for 4 seats.
I don't know, actually there is more people, if who would want or would like a nationalist seat. But the thing is, Shamil, now see, the thing is, even the media.
In your opinion, who do you think deserve to be in the SJB nationalist? Because it's very clear that Sajid Premachandra can't make that decision now. So at least you help him.
Well, SJB nationalist should ideally have people who can help us take the government, not people who would be good in
Who do you think? Who do you think?
You want me to name names?
Yeah, 4 people, just name.
I'd say Hirunika, Tisattanayake, Imtiaz is a good candidate, and 4th one, I don't know, me.
Right. So let's.
He is very honest.
But the thing is this, the media and the public and even the NPP, they are focusing on this problem when this is not a main problem in this country.
No, it's not a main problem in the country. There is no question. There is no question. Don't get this wrong. Now, I saw your party leader saying, "Is this the biggest problem in the country?" Of course not.
Yeah.
This is not the biggest problem in the country, and people don't even want to know these 4 candidates. But you know what the problem is? This shows the divisions within the SJB, which is the main opposition political party in Parliament.
Okay, then let me clarify it this way.
That is the reason.
Shamil,
this is not a national problem. We don't even care who goes from
so
you all don't have any say because there are 159 members in the NPP.
Exactly, right? That's true.
Nothing.
But let me clarify.
Strong opposition is required for democracy.
Exactly. No, I agree with you guys. But the thing is this, Shamil and Niresh, the thing is, we don't have any division inside the SJB. This is not a problem of the SJB. Let me just clarify it for everyone's sake, right? The problem we are having is we have no problem of picking 4 people from the SJB. But we came in through an alliance, right? And before the election, we promised a nationalist seat to Mr. Mano Ganeshan's party, Mr. Rauf Hakim's party, Mr. Rishad Badruddin's party, and
Mr. Digambar.
That's Mano Ganeshan's party. Mano Ganeshan is Digambar's party.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
National Union of Workers.
Then for SLFP and SLPP breakaway fraction of Mr. GL Piris as well. So now there are 6 groups that we have to hold up promises on. Now inside
the members who you mentioned, all of them are STBers.
Exactly.
Because
no.
You said Hirunika Premachandra.
This is the thing.
You said. Imtiaz Bakir Maka and you.
Yeah. So Shamil, let me.
Plus another 6, they need about 10.
You called out 9 names. You asked him to name 4, and you just created 6 enemies.
No. Wait. No. So let me finish, Shamil. Now the problem inside the party is not which 4 SJBers we are going to pick. Our problem is there is actually a debate inside the SJB whether we should honor our promises or not to other parties. There's a fraction inside the SJB.
Let's say you all honor now example, Mano Ganeshan's party. they've very clearly said that they want one seat. Rauf Hakim is hell-bent that he wants a seat as well. Then the SLPP, which is the Asset Jayasekara's party, has said that he wants one seat as well.
And Rishad wants one as well.
And Rishad wants one as well. So that means there's only one member that can be appointed from the SJB national list.
And that's already been appointed?
No, so
we only have 5.
You all have 5, so that's 3. So you all have one more that you all can appoint.
If that's Rishad, Rauf, Mano, and what do you call Dayasiri.
There's no point of talking about it.
This is the actual point. There is a fraction of...
You all can't appoint anyone.
No, you are not letting me finish.
Yeah.
There's a fraction inside the SJB that says...
A fraction?
Yeah, that says that these pre-campaign promises should be honored. And there is another group that says no, because we did not get the support that, that should have come. We did not get the votes, and we actually lost votes because of those alliances that we made. And because of that, there is another faction inside the party saying
on that issue, right?
Yeah.
Because
you
pointed it out that you all quite possibly lost votes because of the alliances that you all made. This was a criticism in the run-up to not just the parliamentary election, but in the run-up to the presidential election as well. Why is the Samagi Jana Balawegaya vacuuming up the flotsam from all of the other political parties? Given that situation, and given that despite the criticism, the party leadership persisted in vacuuming up the flotsam from the other parties, even I think even before, like a week before the election, someone was taken in as well, right? When you all are reflecting on party leadership and you see this poor decision making in the campaign period, like in the heat of the campaign period, don't you think that it's time for a change in the leadership? Before you get to appointing the national list even, that heads need to roll at the
This is the thing, yes, 100%. We made those mistakes and which shouldn't have happened. And right now, yes, we do need to change the way we do things. And I don't think necessarily party leadership should change. Maybe it should. But the thing is, we are not at that point anymore. So the next
major
election...
massive defeats, isn't the party at that point?
No, are you saying it has to change, or are you saying it shouldn't change? Because I'm not.
No, what I'm saying is the way the party takes decisions should change.
You're saying other people shouldn't take who are not in the party.
Let me put it to you this way: the SLPP constitution has a clause that there needs to be an annual confirmation of leadership. Do you think that needs to happen early next year?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong.
Did one happen this year before the election?
It did.
There was a confirmation of Sajid Premdas as party leader. Given that now, I mean, to be fair, let's say 3 major election losses, because 2019 there was no SJB no for the president. He ran under the swan. So let's say that's out. He's now led the party through 3 major election defeats, where at every election the vote share has gotten less and less and less. I mean, if I was a member of that party, I'd be going, let's have a contest for the leadership.
I'm okay for having a contest for the leadership, but the thing is...
Who would that leader be then? Who is the alternative leader?
The contestant.
Alternative contestant. I don't know.
Or contestants, could be several.
Could be.
Bro, let's take for example in 2012 the UNP.
Sorry. Could be who? Yes.
Because the public would like to know who's going, who's in the next year.
Let's all give the attention to Anuradha Wimalaratne. 1, 2, 3 or time starts now. Who is that big leader going to be?
No, I think Sajid should continue as the leader, but he should appoint a new panel. This is something I actually because 2 Sundays ago he actually called all of us to get our opinion on how the party should run, and he was very patient, and he listened to all of us, so which we never see from Mr. Wickramasinghe, and we'll see how he's going to proceed forward. But what I told him is he needs to appoint a young group of people to take the party forward, or to take party decisions, to see how we are going to market. And the names I mentioned was actually Harshana Rajakaruna, Kavinda Jayawardena, Hirunika Premachandra, like a young bunch. And I strongly said no one over 50 should be.
Anuradha, when you
let him talk. Give me a second. We are trying to ask him now. You said Harshan Rajakaruna, Kavinda Jayawardena, Hirunika Premachandra. Harshan De Silva is not in that young list.
He's not. He's 60 plus.
No, so he is not in this young members who has to restructure the party. He is not in the equation.
No, because he's superb. He's very smart. He's amazing when it comes to the economy, and he's a superb guy. But see, they all had a say in how the party was run in the past few elections, and they are basically the old guard.
Right. So now, just to understand what happened
all of
in Parliament
them utterly
today,
failed.
Right. So when you look at what happened in Parliament today, with regard to election promises and pledges, Anuradha. Now, if you look at it, there were many pledges that were made by the NPP. Example, reducing fuel prices by at least 100 rupees. Didn't happen. Electricity tariffs to bring it down by 1/3, 30%. Didn't happen. Arresting and bringing the black money which is parked outside. No, Kris said that. No, the Ugandan money, no, Kris, remember? That was not brought in. No, I'll come back to you, Kris, don't worry. Patience till the last.
The patience is...
So I'll come back to you, I'll switch to you very quickly. So nothing of this has happened. Why aren't you all pressing these facts in Parliament, and why are you all hanging on to something that is not relevant? Today, if you look at the Parliament proceedings, what were you all discussing? Some racist issue. Is that something that has to be discussed at a time that we are looking at a next election? It has to be, why aren't you all fulfilling the promises you all have made during the election campaign? Shouldn't that be the goal at the end of the day?
Because there is an election coming, local government.
Why are you talking about racist issues and
but
other
aren't you all even focusing on that?
Why aren't you all focusing on this most important matter and talking about trivial issues?
This is the thing, Shamil, again, as I said, the mandate of the people was overwhelming. What the people wanted is what they have gotten. And we are actually pushing it to an extent. We are talking about fuel prices, we are talking about how the electricity tariffs haven't gone down. All this is happening.
This was not there in Parliament today.
In Parliament today,
the biggest topic of discussion was the racist issue that is taking the rounds.
This is the thing, Shamil. Yeah, so we are talking about those things as well. But the thing is, people of this country needs to start realizing for themselves what has happened. I think, we need to let this run for about 3 to 6 months and, let people realize.
You all want to eternally be in the opposition?
No. The thing is, the next election is not going to have any say on what we are going to say, right? But what is actually happening in this country, this whole racial issue is actually a major thing, because, maybe the Rajapaksas might have been a racial or bunch of racists, but the thing is,
you have to let Kris respond to that.
But the racial tension that is being built up right now is actually putting the groundwork or the foundation for another 83, because we are at a very dangerous situation. Right after the elections, I went around thanking everyone who supported me in my campaign. Do you know, when I went to areas like Homagama, Maharagama, Kasbawa, and Kaduwela and Avissawella, this is like the Sinhalese areas of Colombo district. Do you know what's the first thing they asked me? LTT is on the rise, no? They are celebrating Prabhakaran, no? That racial tension.
So can I ask,
is real.
You said you went and spoke. Did you take any steps to clarify what actually happened? Or do you believe that people are actually celebrating Prabhakaran in the north and east?
Well, there were things that was happening in the north and east. But the thing is, I explained to this. I explained this to them that we are going in a very dangerous road.
Kris, do you want to respond to Anuradha, with regard to Rajapaksa's being very racist?
Yeah, so Shamir, I just want to go back to Anuradha's opening statement where he put a bullet in the head of the voters by calling them fools. So this statement is also of relevance because, you know, me as a politician will never call any voter a fool. But, you know, maybe the choice that they made later on would have been a foolish choice.
Right.
But by calling your voter a fool, I don't think it's appropriate. So he can call them a racist. Maybe it must be a process of the interpretation and not nothing.
Kris,
I didn't call the voter racist. I called Rajapaksa's racist.
No, not that. I went on the other
Initially, in your opening remarks, if you forgot, you said that voters were very foolish.
They were.
So you
They
said
put the bullet in the head again.
No.
Not
This is the thing. I will always say, you know,
He didn't use the word fool. He said not intelligent.
Yeah, our people look at the way they have voted. You know, they voted for Gotabaya Rajapaksa and now they voted for Arun Kumar.
It's a people's mandate. It's a people's mandate at the end of the day, so we have to respect that. So, Kris, now Anuradha is accepting that there were mistakes within the SJB ranks in terms of an election. I just want to understand, just to clarify, do you all accept that there were mistakes from your side as well?
There were mistakes, Shamir. We have openly accepted the mistakes. We have told the public, you know, where we went wrong.
Where
For example, with the fertilizer subsidy, that was a mistake that we made. So there were mistakes that we openly have stated. And even the burial matter, most of those people contested from the other parties.
Cremation.
Yeah, was cremation. But so that was actually not in the sentiments of the Rajapaksas, but there was a group who
But even Kris, on that issue also, we highlighted this last week as well with another SLPP, or rather LSSP, part of the SLPP alliance member was here. The apology for that came from the Wickramasinghe administration. As far as I recall, no one in the Rajapaksa family or in the leadership of the SLPP
Namal Rajapaksa on open stage
has
said
apologized for that.
Namal Rajapaksa openly said that.
He apologized for the post-cremation policy. He accepted blame for it.
He accepted
that it
he
was
said,
done
but he said that now look at the people who were behind this as to where they are.
So, is he pushing for accountability on that?
That I can't say. I'm not his.
Because the thing is
to decide.
Because when talking about the Rajapaksa, like you correctly mentioned, right? You look at the career of Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. You went as far back as Labour Minister, and his work as Labour Minister. Let's go even further back. He started out as a human rights defender, right?
Yes, that is.
I think although now for a lot of people when they talk about Mahinda Rajapaksa, they might be thinking of the era of cutouts. And the cutout that greeted them when coming from the Katnayaka airport. For me, as a journalist, one of the most striking images of Mahinda Rajapaksa is actually a very old black and white picture of him and Vasudeva Nanayakkara together at, I believe it was Suryakanda, at the mass grave site, where they're looking at a human skull. When you look at even Mahinda Rajapaksa's political journey, from that to then being accused of creating mass graves himself, it's very tragic. And no action from the time he became president also, let's say, forget about any recent mass graves, let's say the mass graves that were there before that. From the time he was in power, when action could have been taken on any of these things, even in that 2019 period when they were in power, 2010 to 15 when having won the war, there was a need to win the peace. No, not a step.
I don't know, Nadim. See, what I'm thinking is, as a journalist, as a politician to a journalist, you being a journalist, what's happening here is you all are going back to the past and digging more graves. Not talking about the actual good things that have happened to the country. If there was 99, you will talk about the one.
I'm not talking about the one because this was the foundation
so the digging
of his political
graves,
career.
Is one thing that even the current government did, and most of those assumptions, those accusations, were proven false.
Kris, there are at last count 26 27 identified mass graves.
25.
25, I believe.
In the north
Right.
and east and
And
the
in the
rest of the
south as
country. Most are in the rest
There
of
was
the
a Office of Missing Persons that was established under the Japan administration. I think roughly about 25,000 complaints there. Any leader that has the political will to put this to rest, all you have to do is match the DNA of the people who have submitted complaints at the Office of Missing Persons with the remains at these mass graves. This is something that, I mean, it could have been done even before the Office of Missing Persons was established. People were submitting complaints regarding disappeared people. No? So this is something that could have been done. I think the technology to do that has been around since the 90s. Even before that, I think DNA came around in the 80s.
globally, it was in the 80s, in Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka in the 90s, right? But the lack of will to do something even as simple as that from a person who launched his political career as a human rights defender seems to me very telling that.
The lack to do that, there's never a lack, Nadine. Don't forget that, he said we will have our own internal solution.
This is an internal solution.
Okay, we will bring up our internal solution.
There are plenty. I'm sure even the government analyst department has the capacity to do this.
Post-war, we took immediate action.
This is the immediate action I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's a very simple internal process. You don't need to bring any international labs. There are plenty of private laboratories in Sri Lanka that are capable of doing it. I'm sure you can even build the capacity at the government analyst department itself. It's a very simple internal solution. But when you look at the fact that not just Mahinda Rajapaksa, right? Even individuals like Mangala Samaraweera got a lot of political clout by talking about enforced disappearances.
Yeah.
Even Mr. Vasudevan Anayakara, even people on the left, etc. But when you look at the once in power, the sheer absence of will to do anything about it seems to then tell the story that, okay, all they really cared about was getting into power.
Well, you'll be seeing a lot of that in time to come because, 212 pages of promises and, you'll see quite a lot of it.
So let me ask this. So now with Namal Rajapaksa, he doesn't have the same history that Mahinda Rajapaksa has, right? Because Namal Rajapaksa's political career starts from a different sort of vantage point. Is he big on putting these issues to rest? Well, I'm not even talking about locking up people and prosecuting people who may or may not have done this. I'm not talking about getting international inquiries. I'm talking about a very simple process. People are submitting complaints saying, Mage mahatya nathi wuna, pawula nathi wuna, etc. All you have to do is match their DNA with the DNA of the remains that have been found. It's a very simple internal process. There is no international involvement or Geneva involvement at all. There's nothing international about it. Completely domestic process. Do you think that at least Namal Rajapaksa, as a forward-thinking leader, because let's say his father won the war, as an effort to win the peace, that he should do this?
Well, no, as you said, Namal Rajapaksa's father won the war. And when the Naganhiru Udane was happening, Namal was one of the first, despite there being terrorist, still groups of them rallying in areas. He was one of the first to go to Kilinochchi, and he based himself in Kilinochchi and overlooked the Mullaitivu Kilinochchi, the Eastern Development Program, heavily. So that was from his prior to coming into Parliament as well. So he continued that work. And even up to date in the north and the east, we still have, maybe not this time, but we did have voter preferences coming in from the north and east. And I'm sure, as a youthful leader and, wanting to progress, he will definitely look at it.
And to be fair, North and the people of the North actually developed without this racial tension being built.
Right. So we don't want to, nothing, let's narrow this topic down that we're discussing today to election pledges and promises. So, Kris, just to understand now, there's a lot on the table as far as the NPP government is concerned. What sort of action would the SLPP now in Parliament take? Are you all siding with the opposition SJB, or are you all independent in Parliament? Just to understand where you all stand as a party.
Well, Shamir, just one thing, you know, now you called us the 3%. Or,
No, I didn't call it 3%.
No,
that's the actual numbers.
Okay. So there is, what is your percentage?
Our percentage, I think, what?
22%.
22%. So 25% of the voter base is represented here. These gentlemen, I can't call them politically biased. But the 52% that represents this country, Shamir, they don't have the guts to come on your platform and face the nation. So if the NPP could have sent a candidate today, there could have been a reasonable discussion on what they could have spoken. But they had the courage to come out prior and falsely make allegations, and you know, the allegations they made people believe that this is the truth. But now it was our chance for us to bring out and question them, but they're not here today.
Yeah,
so
but don't you think, Kris, just to understand now, don't you think in Parliament, you all have to, at least this 25%, you all have to unite now? If you're
Shamir, even today, in Parliament,
government to be questioned, you all have a big role to play.
The first thing that we did today was in Parliament, we said, bring the anti-corruption bill in, and you know, start catching these people who robbed the country. That was what Namal's statement was.
Yeah, but that's also related to him, no?
No, so these are allegations.
Yeah, allegations against him.
Against him, against family.
But don't you think it has to be national politics that we are talking about right now?
So this is national politics. No? It's anti-corruption bill coming in to action is something that the country. This is the main, the foundation on what this government was built on. The foundation on what this government was built on, where they said horu, 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 horu every single day, okay, and that being the main foundation, and that's what people actually believed. Then that's the first thing they should bring in.
So, is it your belief that the NPP government will not proceed against corruption?
I don't think they're capable. If they were capable of doing something, they would have sent someone for this debate today to come and speak to face us.
Yeah, I think they want to, but I don't think they know how to. There's a problem with their, knowledge, I think. That's the problem, and skill.
Right. So, Bram, just to understand, now a lot of promises have been made already by the NPP government. We saw electricity tariffs being brought down, taxes to be brought down. Can all this be done within a span of 1 year? Can this be done practically, in your opinion? We have to keep the momentum going. We shouldn't fall into a debt trap again. We shouldn't fall into a situation where we are at long queues. Can we keep the momentum going by doing all this that has been promised already?
Well, just on the corruption issue, of course, in principle, it's difficult to disagree with, trying to solve corruption. Nobody would actually say, no, don't do that. But I was just in Vietnam, and I don't know if anyone has been following what's been going on there. They call it one of the biggest financial scams in human history.
Yeah, the bank thing, $41 billion, right?
Exactly, that's the one. And this has been going on for at least 10 years. Now my question is, this scale of corruption you see in Vietnam, does that mean that Vietnam is in the same place as Sri Lanka? No, because meanwhile, Vietnam has been developing, it's been industrializing, and it's been solving its external issues, which Sri Lanka has not been doing. So I would not discourage this government from trying to deal with corruption, but I would very much look to them to try and solve these longer-term issues that are clearly more important.
Could you describe some of these longer-term issues? With
I
the
keep
Vietnam
coming back
experience?
to it. Yeah, I keep coming back to it. It's the trade deficit that has existed forever. Like Dhananath was saying before, there was a lot borrowed in the period from 2010 to 2019. Why? Because Sri Lanka was importing more than it was exporting. Very simple. And remember, this was a time when tourism was booming and remittances were solid. Still, Sri Lanka had to borrow. Still, that trade deficit could not be overcome.
Bram, now,
and we know where that ended.
Yeah, but Bram, we know it's no point of reflecting in the past, because we can't talk about spilt milk anymore. It's already spilled. But now we are speaking about what's going to happen in the next few years.
I think it's very relevant because for 40 years, nobody looks at the past and says, let's try to solve this issue. I think it's more important than anything else.
So this is a critical issue then?
Absolutely. And this is the one thing that every successful East Asian economy has done is solve this trade deficit.
Bram, just want to understand, now the government is saying electricity tariffs will be brought down by 30%. They are saying the pay tax threshold will be reduced and the net would be widened a little bit further. Then they are saying rice would be imported, right? Cost of living is somewhat at stress right now as we speak. Can all these promises be done that was discussed at election fora before the elections right now without upsetting the apple cart?
I think in the next few months they can do a lot of these things that they've promised. But further down the line, I think they'll really have big issues with their budget. And that's because of the Central Bank Act that was implemented, which has put major constraints on how the government can run a budget deficit. Actually, it can't anymore. And that in itself is going to pose major difficulties for the MPP to do the spending plans that they have, especially if we're headed into a recession, which many economists believe the global economy is headed in, and you can bet that Sri Lanka is going to feel that. That's going to put pressure on the budget.
So Dhananath, isn't it the role of the IMF to keep this on check as far as the government is concerned, you know? Just to be with a stick and hit us every time we make a mistake.
IMF role, Shamir, is to stabilize the economy. That they have pretty much done now.
But even if you look at it, even the third tranche has not come in because they have said, we want to see a budget.
Correct.
Only then will we release it.
Which is the right thing to do. That's why I said if the budget was brought in first, things would have been better. But again, IMF mandate is to stabilize. So it will take about 4 years till this debt restructuring, everything happens. But the challenge is to grow the economy. Now, even if we want to move to production, there are key reforms that needs to be done, even bringing down the electricity prices. Shamir, I have spoken this before on the same show. Even Elon Musk comes, there's no land. About 90% of our all industrial land, which is under export development zones, are already occupied. So that's what I meant by the structural reform. So if you really want to move for production, you have to have adequate land when the investor comes. If you go to Vietnam, if you go to Malaysia, if you go to Thailand, Shamir, you know this better than I do, it's available. There are ample opportunities for the investors to go there. Electricity prices, I do not think, I think the correct promise could have been, rather than reducing it by 30%, the cost of production has to be brought down by 30%. Because if the government is going to bring it down by 30% through a subsidy, that means someone else has to pay for it. That will come as a separate tax. That is not feasible. So definitely electricity prices has to come down. We are one of the highest in the region. But the cost of the production cost has to come, and I do not see the electricity prices coming down without amending the Electricity Act, without unbundling, without getting more players into the market, without improving the service. I do not see a way how can we reduce the electricity prices, and if we can do it, I think for the longest history, government has been running it.
Right, so
Dhananath,
but with NPP, government never said they are going to reduce by 30%.
No, I'm saying, I'm not saying that.
Political party did. Government is saying, I think in 3 years.
So energy is going to be crucial to
that's the NPP government.
Following economic stabilization, even for growth. Energy is going to be a crucial sector, right? Like we spoke about transportation, which also
one half of energy is, of course, what you're spending on mobility.
I believe some time back, the Moratoria University Transport and Logistics Department noted that I think 80% of the fuel that we import goes to transportation, and 75% or 70% of that is from private transportation, right? The rest is on public transport and electricity generation. Then you have the CEB going on this coal mindset. We have to maintain, we need baseload coal. And the people that have been appointed now by the NPP to run the CEB of the same mindset. And given the NPP's stance on liberalizing, let's say, key sectors like energy, I think what you're talking about of unbundling and having other players come in is maybe a pipe dream. Maybe we're wrong about it, but it sounds like a pipe dream.
No, it was
Right.
online.
Right?
It was online, but then the MPP, prior to the elections, they deprived those investors by coming in. They demotivated them.
So
But that's okay.
given
After
that
the
that is the
PNC,
case,
it's going to
like
change.
Even like last year, there were other economists around the world who were talking about Sri Lanka is very precarious because come 2028 we could be heading in for another default because concerns were raised regarding macro-linked bonds, etc. Do you think that this government has enough wriggle room to actually get anything done on these issues? Because we asked this question when we did have an NPP representative here, specifically on this issue of the CEB. Because when looking at the appointments that they're making to the CEB, it seems that they're planning to continue with the same old way of thinking. Does it strike you as the same?
Yes, without those hard decisions, things would be very difficult. Because, Nadeem, I see it as a science. Because without those changes, there is no way that you can move this ship even an inch. So whoever who comes to power will face that challenge. As I say, the water is the same. Now the boots have changed, but the water remains as it is.
So it's only been over a couple of months now, so let's be fair by them, like maybe results will take a time concern. Specifically regarding the appointments that they're making to these key crucial sectors, right? Power and energy is going to be a very crucial sector in Sri Lanka's economic recovery, or regardless of which way you want to go as an economy, whether, as Bram says, become a production manufacturing economy, or whether you go more on the services side, tourism, finance, etc. Energy is going to be crucial. Energy, some degree of energy independence or rationality in energy thinking is necessary. When you look at the appointments that President Anuradha Wimalaratne made shortly after becoming president, specifically to the CEB, do you feel that they're thinking in the right direction, or it's going to be more of the same?
I do not want to comment on the appointments, but in terms of a strategy that reversing some of the reforms and reversing some of the amendments done to the Electricity Act, I think that is not in the right direction.
And if you mess up energy, you messed everything
No, the
up.
appointments, Nadeem, were purely based on the support that was given to them and the help and the friendship that they had with the party.
You all have done even worse during your time.
Yeah, doesn't mean that repeating the same
when
mistake is the right way to go.
When it comes to with electricity generation,
You know how many ministers' daughters at foreign ministry postings to Kris? You want me to name them?
Yes, so now this government came with that same policy, na?
Okay.
How many husband and wife, father and son, how many are there at the moment?
Right. And just want to still on the same subject that we were talking about. Now there was a state-owned enterprise restructuring unit, Dhananath, that was appointed, and Suresh Shah was the Director General. I just want to understand now: is this unit still there, or it's not there, based on your understanding?
As per my understanding, it's no longer there.
It's no longer
Everyone
there.
has the state-owned enterprises restructuring unit. The volunteer board has resigned before the presidential election.
Okay.
So that is no longer there.
Right. So we also knew at one point Balthazaar was also
Correct.
part of a committee that was advising the government. So he's also no longer.
He's not advising the government. He was part of the SOE restructuring unit.
So he's not
a
there.
volunteer,
Right.
Volunteer position, and he's no longer there.
Right. So are you all even aware that whether the government has any plans to restructure SOEs? Because we saw recently the statement that was made by Ranjan Jayalar, a trade union activist of the NPP, saying that this is our brothers.
Yeah.
We can sort it out.
Also the CEB. Again the CEB.
You know, it's like, what's this happening? You know.
Correct. So in terms of SOEs, Shamir, there are two categories. One are the network industries, that is the Water and Drainage Board, CEB and Petroleum. That was a separate restructuring plan, and the rest of the Sri Lankan Airlines, SLT, Lanka Hospitals, all are at a separate route. So these, mainly the CEB, the Water Board, which was not touched, and the Petroleum was under those particular ministries. The others were, I think, under the State-owned Enterprise Restructuring Unit. At the moment, we do not know the direction. What we all know is...
So we don't know what's happening.
We don't know what's happening, but I think it's critical that some level of reform, of course, I advocate for certain SOEs that has to be privatized. Some has to brought into a Temasek model. Some has to be let it go. Some we have to consolidate. There has to be a suits of multiple options. But if the government is reluctant, if their policy is not to privatize, I would even recommend to bring everything under one Temasek model, because then these questions of these appointments won't come. Because now still the problem is the minister appoints the directors. And regardless of how good the director is, ultimately there can be a lot of things that can go wrong. So ideally it has to come under one Temasek or corporate model, which is one of the key recommendations by the IMF Governance Diagnostic Report, which we are already delayed. That is to improve governance as well.
Bram, quick question for you, if I may. Like, we know that in this sort of delicate balancing act that Sri Lanka has to pay, we are now not only is economic environment precarious, the global environment itself is extremely precarious, right? President Dhananath had voiced his intention to join up with the BRICS countries. And we saw just last week, President-elect Trump of the United States has put a spanner in the works for BRICS plans to introduce alternate reserve currency.
Bit of a threat that was.
Basically, you're going to slap you with a 100% tariff. And in Sri Lanka also, we've seen, I'm not saying that the two are connected, but around the same, that Sri Lanka was chairing a committee of inquiry into the actions of the State of Israel. And around the same time that the report of that committee was being finalized, a travel advisory was issued on Sri Lanka by multiple countries. In this environment, where do you think Sri Lanka needs to position itself? Because our biggest trading partners are still the US and Europe, right? In this tightrope walking act, can we, despite our, let's say, maybe willingness to explore further cooperation with BRICS countries, even with countries like Russia, where should Sri Lanka be headed? How should we structure our foreign policy, which will have a direct impact on our economic policies as well?
Well, what I appreciate about President Trump, or President-elect, as you said, is, as we know from his last term, he cuts through the bullshit, pardon my language. It's not that he's doing that many revolutionary things. He's just being very honest about how US politics has always worked. He said it very honestly. We went into Syria because we wanted the oil. We are antagonizing Venezuela because we're also interested in their oil. And he is now being very honest about how crucial it is for the US to keep the US dollar as reserve currency. And he knows that the BRICS is actually his biggest problem, or America's biggest problem at the moment. But don't think that it's just Trump. Remember, Biden continued all of Trump's tariff policies, and even escalated them further. So what we're seeing now is actually a world where the gloves have come off, and it's very explicit. It's no longer this pretense where, we can trade and everyone will be the happiest and best we can be. This is the way it's always been. Countries are competing with each other. China is America's biggest rival, and Trump is the result of that.
How should Sri Lanka position ourselves now?
So
now
that's
that,
what
as you said, now that the gloves are off, everyone's being blunt.
Yeah.
Mr. Trump is definitely being blunt about what his intentions are. Can Sri Lanka's, we say it's non-aligned and non-this thing, but it's maybe not so in practice. But can Sri Lanka's foreign policy is another crucial sector for us as well. Like, how do we engage in this global power grab balancing act.
So that's
Right.
exactly what I was coming to, is now I see this as a great opportunity for Sri Lanka. Because we're now dealing with a bipolar or even multipolar world where Sri Lanka has the opportunity to play the game that Vietnam played. And that is to indeed take the non-aligned position, but also say, you know, you come and produce here and, you know, we don't like China, let's work together. But at the same time, you speak to any Vietnamese, China is in that economy like no one else is. And so it's a difficult path to tread, but I think it's crucial to play that game now. And also, you know, both parties are desperate to get these deals with every country
So
in the
bilateral
world.
trade agreements are going to be crucial for Sri Lanka
I
moving
think
forward.
so. Right. I
And
think so.
where should that focus be? Who should we be focusing on in terms of pursuing bilateral trade agreements?
I think everyone. This again, there are
anyone
so
who
many.
will trade with us.
And there are so many lessons to be learned from Vietnam. Again, look at everyone that's there. You have the Korean companies that are there, Samsung especially, Intel is there, Apple is there, but also Chinese companies. BYD is now getting very big in Vietnam. Everyone is there. And see, the companies in the end don't really care about this geopolitical game. All they want is to make a profit. And that is in the interests of the country that invites them, because what they in the end want is them to come and produce there, to contribute to the exports, but also
Just
to
one-
start
one-
sharing some of the technology.
One final thing before Shamir cuts me off, cuts me off for the rest of the night. When you say manufacturing economy, what you mean is a country that is manufacturing complex products, right?
Exactly.
Not simple like raw materials or
Exactly.
like
Moving
very
up that
basic
value chain. So, in effect, Sri Lanka started this process, I would say, possibly already in the 70s, but you really saw it take off in the 90s with President Premadasa's 200 garments factories plan. And there, that process should have continued, because again we can see that in every successful East Asian country, and you can go back to even the European countries, they started with garments production and then slowly shifted into the higher value, more complex products you were talking about, electronics, machinery, cars, those sort of things. And again, this is something that I'm not seeing in the discussions regarding policy. And I hope comes in the next few months, possibly with the budget.
Yeah. So, Anuradha, just to understand now, are you going to contest the upcoming local government elections if there is a election?
Local government, most probably not.
Provincial councils, maybe.
Maybe.
You've been in the provincial council before.
I have been in the provincial council before, and my personal opinion about the provincial councils is we should abolish it. You know, we should do away with it, because it's an unnecessary burden on the public economy, and it's an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy in this country.
So you said, Anuradha, that you all met last week on Sunday. Am I right?
Yeah.
The individuals who contested the election. What was the strategy? Because when we discuss about when you said that you all had a meeting, was a strategy discussed at this meeting as to how to counter the NPP agenda in Parliament or even outside?
And also, was there a strategy discussed at all about the local government elections?
No, this was actually a preliminary round of getting opinions of, because I met with the group representing Colombo, right? And then right after that meeting, people from Gampaha came in, and I think results of that would come out most probably end of this week or early next week. But everybody's opinion was taken into account, and there was many ideas. My personal opinion was I told we should let the government go without hindering it too much, because the same way that they used to do. I said, like, instead of hindering them, let them have a fair go, and let them prove whether they can do it or whether they can't do it to the people. Because right now, whatever we say with the mandate they have gotten, they can go to the public and say anything, and the public will believe it. Right now, I think we should let the government run and let the people realize that what these people said were utter lies and they cannot deliver on those promises. Because if we keep hindering this government, they will say, the reason we couldn't do all this was because they were hindering. We are going to be the opposition that they never were. Because they always started hammering the government, hindering progress by attacking from day one. So we are not going to do that. And I think, and I like the way this government is going. The way they are reacting to the, what do you call, labor unions. I like it. I like the way that they are reacting to public protest, because these were initially led by them. I like the fact that they are realizing most this country's development was hindered by these unions and union actions, which they were behind. And I'm loving the fact that the people of this country are realizing that as well. And to finish off, I think we are in a very...
I will come back to you for the last round. Don't worry, Anuradha. I'll come back to you. Kris, are you going to contest
Yes.
an upcoming local government election? What's the strategy that you all have in mind?
We've been through rounds of discussions internally. So we've been restructuring most of the candidates and going through a bit of a party restructuring mode at the moment, because you know, as we said, we've made mistakes and we've had a few people that were not suitable for the SLPP on board. So,
but Kris, will you be the mayoral candidate for the
Yes, I'll be.
You will be.
I'll be.
And positive of winning, Kris, that's the most important thing about being a candidate is all.
I have a clean, proven track record. So, you know, I have nothing to worry about it. It's the people's choice.
So, Kris, being a resident of Devula Mount Lavinia, past resident of Devula Mount Lavinia myself, I'll ask this question, right? I don't want to know what Namal Rajapaksa or the SLPP's vision for that constituency is, because I think we focus too much on other issues. You've just announced that you are going to be the mayoral candidate. What is your vision for that constituency?
See, there was a plan that we drew during, there was a blueprint that was drafted during Gotabaya Rajapaksa's time, where Colombo South and Devula Mount Lavinia Ratmalana. And there is also a scope, I can't expose it right now because...
because you already have it.
No, we have it.
Oh, okay.
We have a blueprint. In fact, I was... no, I don't want to mention it on this program at this time, but then, you know, we have given...
but we will invite you back in the future to explain it.
Hopefully with someone from the government side as well who will...
Of course, Kris, don't worry about that.
I mean, in the run-up to the local government election, hopefully we'll have the mayoral candidates from all of the different parties, right?
That would be good.
No, Kris, I just want to know now, have you all already discussed about who the mayor candidates are going to be, or will you come next month and say that they didn't appoint you as the mayor candidate from
I have been with my party since day one, and
So Dhananath is not going to be the mayor candidate of the SLPP?
Let him come and say that he wants to be the candidate. He's more than welcome, but I don't think Dhananath is more into active politics anymore.
So you're 100% sure it's going to be you?
I'm positive that it's going to be me.
You're positive?
I'm positive.
Shouldn't the party be positive about it as well?
Well,
if you're not, let's say the party forms new alliances with other people, etc., and if it is denied you, will you then, you said you've been with the party since day one, will that be a red line? This is where Kris Balthazaar's support ends?
No.
You will continue on.
Right. So let's wrap up tonight's show. I just want to start with Bram Nicholas. Bram, what is the way forward for Sri Lanka? Because now we have so much of promises on the table. People have even lost track of these promises. Now we're heading for an election. We are heading for a vote on account. We're heading for a budget. What should the government keep in mind?
Well, I'm reminded of one of the promises, which was making me hopeful in particular, which was renegotiation of the foreign debt agreement. Because There's something Professor Jayati Ghosh, I don't know if you know her, she said on Sri Lankan television not too long ago.
We have had her on our shows.
All right, I hope she said it then, but I'll repeat it now. Really insightful is, if you look back at history at Germany post Second World War, and you look at how that debt restructuring took place, remember, we're just coming out of the Second World War. There's absolutely no reason to treat Germany as fairly as they did. But let's say, there's absolutely no reason why Sri Lanka shouldn't be treated as fair or even fairer. But what they got was a debt renegotiation where, let's forget for a moment that 50% of the principal was cut. The interest payments were actually tied to export performance, and this was crucial. They said, we are going to count it as a percentage of exports, namely 3%. That's what they'll be paying. That's the maximum. And if there is a trade deficit, Germany would not have to pay interest that year. This is something that Sri Lanka desperately needs, this focus on how it's going to earn the dollars. And we have seen time and time again from every single successful East Asian country, the only way to do that is to get manufacturing going in the way that we just talked about it, higher value added. That's how you solve that trade deficit, and that's how you prevent debt crises from happening again and again and again, foreign debt crises. Because it's not an issue of the debt itself, it's an issue of earning the foreign exchange. That is the critical issue. And I think this is something that the NPP really needs to look at, if it hasn't already, maybe it has, which is not just all these calculations regarding the debt, but really how, moving forward, is Sri Lanka going to earn the dollars that are so desperately needed to prevent another crisis.
Right. Thank you very much, Bram Nicholas. Dhananath Fernando, Advocata Institute, CEO.
If this government or whoever the government is going to be successful, there's a recipe that they have to follow. There is no other recipe. That's proven, and that's the only way out. We have to first have sort these land issues out if we were to attract production. We have to sort the labor issues because our labor regulations are quite archaic, and there's no production company, let's say Samsung or Tesla or whoever, is not going to come with this labor set and with the regulatory barriers at the labor market that we have. Bram spoke about Vietnam. Vietnam, the female labor force participation is about 60%, our is 30%. There are regulatory reasons why our female labor force participation is low. So without those mandatory changes, this production thing is not going to work. You have to do those changes. On bringing down electricity price, fuel price, all the prices, again, the only way out is increasing the efficiency. There's no way, there's no formula, magic formula in this world. You can sell something below your cost of production. That's very basic. So to bring down the cost of production, you have to improve the efficiency. For that, you have to bring the private investors. And even for production, we cannot depend on the local currency. We have to depend on the foreign direct investment. On that front, we have to bring investors from outside. For that, we have to again have a easy business environment. And one potential market is India, because their growth rate is tremendous, and they are next door and they have an interest. We have an interest. Of course, it will come at a geopolitical cost, but we have to manage it. But that's a potential market. Final point, I think Nadeem brought it out, the geopolitical tensions and the foreign policy is crucial, because with what Trump is going to do, and with the rest of the geopolitical imbalances, already I think China is considering selected tariffs on certain industries in the US, and this is going to escalate, and we are going to be in the middle of this geopolitical football game. And it's very crucial that we maintain our stance and get the benefit, because with Trump's higher tariff, we really do not know what are the numbers. There's a chance that this with China +1, we will get the opportunity. But for us to get the opportunity, we have to be prepared. Our land has to be ready, our production cost has to be down, our labor markets has to operate. Where I would I have a different view to Bram is on the central bank independence. In my view, the trade deficit is influenced by the budget deficit. As I mentioned, your dollar demand is increased by your rupee supply. And the rupee supply, if the government is going to bridge the budget deficit constantly by borrowing from the central bank or borrowing from the markets and bringing down the interest rates artificially down, then we will be definitely in trouble. I have used this quote before, stability is not everything, but without stability, everything is nothing. And on this case, the monetary stability is everything, and without monetary stability and the stability of our financial markets, everything would be nothing.
Right. Thanks a lot, Dhananath. Kris, Balthazaar from the SLPP.
See, Shamir, I have a 1,000 rupee note on my hand here. This 1,000 rupee note, you know what it's going to get you now at this very moment? 2 coconuts and 2 kilos of rice. That's all you'll get to take home if you go with this. So the government that came in promising the people that you'll get 4 coconuts and 4 kilos of rice, now it's not only the price factor, it's the availability factor, where coconuts are not available in the market, there's no rice in the market. They've said that they're importing 70,000 tons of rice into the market. The daily consumption of Sri Lanka's rice consumption is 6,500 tons. So this is not going to last us 10 days as per their thing. So, you know, where it's heading is a big problem. And, you know, I won't be surprised if the government comes out and tells us, you know, only if you have to have rice, otherwise don't, like the passport matter. You know, unless you really need the passport, don't go for your passport. That's going to be the same thing that they're going to say about the rice and the coconuts in the coming few days.
So, Gotabaya Rajapaksa said, have 1 meal a day.
No, that was never said, Ramir, at that. Which point was that said?
During COVID?
During COVID, 1 meal a day? No. We fed the people. The government at that time gave 5,000 rupees a week to the people.
After, you can't remember, during that bankruptcy time,
no,
the government said,
the government never, government never.
Didn't say that, no?
No, you said Gotabaya Rajapaksa
was in
No, you said
cabinet,
Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Bandra Gunawardena was in the cabinet, no?
Yes, but then Gotabaya Rajapaksa as the president never said that.
But 1 meal a day, have 1 meal a day, just a little bit.
No, not 1 meal a day. He emphasized on that a family can have survive on 2,500 rupees.
So that inclusive of that
I know.
1,000 rupees?
So that's what I'm saying. So this
inclusive of that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Because of those things, now the government changed, Shamir. With the changing, it's only 2 coconuts and 2 kilos of rice that you can take home.
At that time, 2,500 rupees, you couldn't even buy a kilo of rice, I think.
Now there's no rice.
1 kilo of carrot was 2,900.
Now there's no rice.
You can't remember. At that time, when your government was in power, the kilo of carrot was 2,900 rupees.
It went up 2,000 and it went up 1,790.
You must be buying it from somewhere else, but when I went and checked, it was 2,900. Anyway, that's okay. That's
No, but at that time, essential goods were cheaper. Dal was 65 rupees, rice was 98.
Tin fish is 110.
Yeah.
Now it's, well, how much is it?
That price control was there.
So price control was there. The supply.
Price control is not an option. You just
but then what I'm saying is that for the demand,
all this was there, but it was not available.
For the demand, the supply was there.
Yeah, but it was not available. 65 rupees a kilo of dal was not available. 100
people
rupees,
went into
lockdown. The canned fish, it was not available.
People went into lockdown. The food was still there. Don't forget, Shamir. Now, what plans do they have with this flooding? It's not only the harvest that we have to consider about. It's the next step. How are we going to recrop? Reorganizing of stocks, the seeds, for the paddy seeds. How are you going to source that? How moving forward? What are they going to do? You know, if the crop damage, are the farmers going to get what they deserve? The damage of their losses, because these farmers are already in debt. So, you know, I know it's too early for us to, you know, go out and criticize the government, but already, I don't want to put them down at start, but already as starting operation, they have failed in what they promised. So, that failure of promises back to back and talking, when you come to us, you all talk of a long-term this thing. We at least had a 100-day plan. We delivered by this time we were recruiting 100,000 people for degree holders for state jobs. By this point, we were planning out to build 5,000 houses for 14,000 houses for people who did not have housing. The SLPP government had a plan. So the problem where we went wrong was, or sadly because of the circumstances at the point, was reducing the tax at that point, where an unexpected happened, and it is not something that was homegrown or locally grown. It was an international, global pandemic that hit our country. Whether we liked it or not, we had to go in for a lockdown.
In 2019, when the opposition leader raised the issue in Parliament of the pandemic and the need for the country to prepare for the pandemic, your MPs laughed at it.
Well, not that we laughed at it. It was
They did laugh.
considered.
They did.
No.
They did laugh at it.
Yeah, but then the
Quite
same
on national TV, yes.
the same opposition leader came out and said, for the only cure for COVID is taking Plaquenil.
No, not only. He said,
I'm not.
I really don't want to comment on Sajid Premadas's statements because it's it will end up like a comedy show on Face the Nation. But still, we hope the government can come out of build and deliver what they've promised. And as the SLPP, yes, we've come down to the 3%, and we are progressively, we know where we're heading next. Lots of people who already voted for this government are coming back because it's most of the SLPP pre-votes that actually went to this government. So all those people are tending to understand what the reality is and coming back. So we are building ourselves and building ourselves strong.
Well, I stand corrected, Kris. It was SLPP Member of Parliament Jagat Kumar on the 13th of September 2021 said that the public should be prepared to sacrifice one meal a day in order to save the country from the economic crisis.
Should be prepared.
Right.
So, Shamil,
Kris doesn't want to talk about the SJB because it will be a comedy.
But the thing is, I like what he said at the end, that the same people that fell for that Gota's promises, fell for the AKD promises, which is true. And those were the foolish voters that I was talking about. Same bunch, right. But, since what happened, the way forward for this country is actually really scary for me. We have a president who came into power purely by misleading the public, or easily misled people who will be easily misled, and by misleading them with so much false promises. And we have a parliament that is filled with, for a lack of better words, Hollywood hillbillies. And I think we have totally lost face.
Just to clarify, now there are members of parliament who have been elected, so let's respect them, because there has to be some sort of
that's true. But this is the thing, Shamil.
You're saying
Face
people
the
are not
nation.
intelligent. You're saying people are not intelligent. You're saying the parliamentarians who are going to parliament are breaking. Those are very trivial matters.
Shamil, this is the thing. Face the nation is one of the best and probably the only.
But let's not talk about all that, because those are very.
But this is one of the English programs, that one of the few English programs, political programs in this country. They failed to send a representative for this program. During the election time, they was going on. Why aren't these people sending? Why isn't Sajid going? Now they have the platform, but they don't have a plan, or they don't have someone that can come here and defend their policies and defend their parliament. See, that is where we are, and that is my main concern, because we have a president who doesn't know what he's doing. He did not go for the BRICS summit, which would have been very important, and he is basically, in my opinion, acting like a crony of the West, right? And now come few weeks, he's going to go in for a state visit in India. You know what they are going to ask him? They are going to ask him to give the powers back to enforce the 13th Amendment powers, have provincial council elections, and the next thing they are going to say is let Adani have those power projects, right? And there is a huge problem with that in the US, because Adani is getting sued in the US for bribery, because this is part of the whole geopolitical game. And I don't think we are positioning ourselves properly in this whole world stage. We are at a very crucial place, as Bram and Dhananath said. We are at a very place that we can actually use our location and influence to gain a massive benefit. But I don't think we have an administration that has the know-how or the knowledge to do that. What I am seeing is we are going down the same road that Ukraine went. We are going to antagonize India, get ourselves pulled in as a pawn of this global power struggle. China and US is not our problem. We have India.
Right.
India could be our problem or our biggest benefactor.
Right.
We just need to manage that properly.
Right. Thanks a lot, Anuradha Wimalaratne from the SJB. Kris Balthazaar from the SLPP, Bram Nicholas, Economist, as well as Dhananath Fernando, CEO of Advocata Institute. Dhananath, you're not among the 3,000 people who went and reserved an electric car.
I'm not. I was not like you, I did not have the resources.
I just went to. I did not.
Did you not? Did you?
No,
Or
I
did
went.
you not?
I went because I was coming on the show tonight, and I wanted to make sure that how many vehicles have been reserved thus far.
So you have not reserved a car.
But Dhananath, very quickly, because the people who are reserving a car are the audience that that watch Face the Nation, all that and more. You said that the taxes are should be reduced, the 300% tax. So would that reflect the prices in the future as well, or do you think that decision would be taken by the government to reduce the taxes?
I doubt whether the government would reduce the taxes, because they want to actually raise revenue. Which I do not recommend. So most likely they will actually increase it rather than bringing it down.
Do you advise the people to go and reserve vehicles of that sort now?
I do not, because I cannot ensure the decision of the government, because imagine they are going to go and reserve, and then the government is continuation with the import ban, then they will all be in trouble. So I won't do that recommendation. But this tells us a lesson. If you have an import control or a higher tariff, it creates black markets.
All right, thanks a lot, Dhananath Fernando, CEO of Advocata Institute. Thank you very much, Niresh. Thank you very much, Nadeem. Thank you as well for posing questions from our panelists today on the number 07665655353. It was a pleasure to have those questions posed to our panelists as the show went along. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on Face the Nation as well. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. The politicians' promises of yesterday are the taxes of today. Take care and good night.